Welcome to the Indigenous Forum. My name is Cara Romero. I'm so thankful to be here. I'm so thankful to be here in Berkeley. I'm so honored to see such a large crowd here at the Indigenous Forum. Yes, it's very, very exciting. And I'm very excited to introduce our next panel. Today at 3 o'clock, we're going to be beginning a conversation about a buzzword that we've been hearing for many years now and talk about Landback. This is a movement that has been started and has caught on like wildfire throughout not only the United States, but up north, our brothers and sisters to the south. And we have three subject matter experts, people that are not only leading in the movement, but leading their individual movements with Landback. And so I honor all of you for being here to learn about what that looks like, get inspired so that perhaps we can do that in our own communities. Learn about why it's important, and learn how we can be good allies, and listen to the calls to action at the end of the panel so that we can help Indigenous peoples steward the land that was stolen from us, right? And so that's why we're here today. I'm going to have a seat and introduce our panelists. I'm just so honored to be here with all of you, and I'm going to start on the end. This is Corrina Gould. She's the leader of the Lejeune Ohlone Confederated Tribes of Lejeune Villages. Did I say it right?
We'll get there.
Okay. She will correct me. Sorry, I get a little nervous, and then it all goes out of my head. But anyways, Corrina is a longtime leader here in the Bay Area. Deeply admired, highly outspoken. She has taught me over the years about the importance of the sacred shell mounds, about what it is to live in a city with sacred sites that's so urbanized. And I think what we forget in these larger metropolitan areas is that the energy that is in these places comes from it being an original sacred place of the Native peoples, right? And we enjoy these urban epicenters and the energy of these urban epicenters, but they were sacred places and holy places before all of the asphalt, the concrete, the highways, right? And so Corrina leads a Landback movement, Sogorea Trust, right here in the East Bay that we'll learn about. Thank you so much for being here, Corrina. PennElys in this, yes.
Everything back.
PennElys Droz is my Anishinaabe sister. She is a leader, a campaigner. She works for sustainable projects. She has been an environmental activist as long as I've known her, working on regenerative practices. She is now one of the leaders and executives, again, for the NDN collective that I talked about earlier in the plenaries. She's going to tell us about that work, and we're so happy to have you here, PennElys. And this is my new friend, Kawenniiosta Jock. She is my Mohawk sister, and she's going to talk about her farm that she started with her Landback Language and Cultural Immersion Center, and I'm going to do my best to pronounce it, Yojijizo, which means Sky Woman's Forever Farm. Yeah. I wanted to announce that our brother that was supposed to be here, Tom Nason, Little Bear from Esalen, will not be here due to health concerns, and so we'll hold him in kind thought and in spirit, and I think that these ladies can hold it down for us today. So without further ado, I would like to start with Corrina, and can each of you spend some time telling us about how you're working in this idea, this concept of Landback?
I think you guys are far enough away from me. Nay. Corrina, thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this beautiful panel here today, and thank you all for wanting to spend time with us and to dream in all of this amazing work that's happening. I always say that, this work started thousands of years ago, and it started, a couple of hundred years ago as well, when the Spanish first got here and stole our sacred sites and our ability as women to be leaders, and took away our ability to speak our own languages and to pray in the way that we want to. And so we have been trying to get back since first contact. And so this Landback movement didn't start out with us as trying to figure out how to do this. It was trying to figure out how to get over 9,000 ancestors home from UC Berkeley, and the hundreds and hundreds of ancestral remains that are in universities and museums and other places in the Bay Area. And as a non-federally recognized tribe, what does that look like when you have been erased from your own place of origin? The fourth grade history taught about us and taught about us in the past, taught that we ate acorns, and we used to have tule houses, and we used to have tule boats, and we used to hunt in this way, and we used to be gatherers. And then the Spanish got here and everything changed, but they don't tell the story that it's usually told in, that we know that what they brought was not just this way of farming that was not familiar to us, and they didn't just bring language, but they brought rape and murder and horrific things that we don't want to talk about every day. And those same myths were told when my kids went to fourth grade in the Bay Area. And we are currently working with a lot of amazing educators to change that myth. But over 25 years ago, we started to do work in the Bay Area about bringing recognition to the generic term of Ohlone, that we were still here, and that we walked to shell mounds in the Bay Area starting in 2005, and we walked from Vallejo down to San Jose and up to San Francisco with hundreds of people from all walks of life, stopping at these different burial sites of our ancestors that were under railroad tracks and parking lots and schools and bars and streets. And we laid down prayers for our ancestors, asking them to remember us as we were remembering them. And so for decades, we worked together with many people that were in our territory, people that have been moved to the Bay Area, Native people from relocation policies of the United States government that were trying to push people out of their reservations and into big cities, hoping that they would assimilate and that there would be no longer a need for the treaties that the United States had created. And we did this work all on our own, without a nonprofit, it was out of our own pockets, really, doing this work of doing this. And then in 2011, those that live in the Bay Area may remember that the city of Vallejo actually filed bankruptcy. And when they filed bankruptcy, there was 2 shell mounds that were along the Carquinez Strait, the last 13 acres of open space on that place, a place that connects our bay to our rivers, to the place where our salmon come up and our salmon go back into the ocean. This place that had been a place that my ancestors had held as one of the last strongholds before they got pulled into Mission Dolores in San Francisco. And after 12 and a half years of working, this organization called Spirit that was run by Wounded Nadeo Campo, and his niece, Kim, is here with us today, and she's on the board of directors of Segurite Land Trust, that this connection of trying to save this particular sacred site is what got us to where we are today. For 109 days, we held that site with a sacred fire that was lit, and people from all walks of life came and put down prayers at that fire, hoping to save it from a destruction that was going to happen. Because although the city of Vallejo had filed bankruptcy, they gave the park district $30,000 worth of permits for free in order to destroy that site. And so we made a call out because we had done these walks, because people understood what shell mounds were now, because they understood that we were still alive, that they came and they stayed with us, and we created a village there. And we were surrounded by Coast Guard and police and all all of the other people that were there. It was an interesting time, but that land changed us. It changed our DNA. It made us somebody different. We remembered what it was like to be human beings and to live in community again and to acknowledge each other and to share food and prayer with one another on a daily basis, to put down prayers every morning together and at night, and to hold strong together. And so that place saved us in that kind of way. And on day 99, 2 federally recognized tribes stepped in. It was not their territory, but they stepped in and they created the first cultural easement between 2 federally recognized tribes, a park district and a city, that saved that land from being developed forever. It was because of that. Yep. But it was because we stood strong. It was because we were the ones that said that that site needed to be protected. If we had not stood our ground, that land would be destroyed today. That place, Sigorate, that village site, is the place that that still holds that sacredness to us, that we continue to go and have ceremony for our salmon there, joined by many other people, including my good friend from the Winnemem Wintu, the spiritual leader and chief, Colleen Sisk. And we've been doing run for salmons up and down from Shasta down to the ocean and the ocean up to Shasta. We're going on 8 years now. But it wasn't that I knew what a land trust was when we first started. About 6 months after I was at Sigorate and we left, many of us had what I call PTSD, because I had to come from being in that village and that life again, of a life of being human, to back into my house where neighbors didn't talk to each other and you had to go to work from 9 to 5. And it was this very strange time. But my good friend Beth Rose Middleton, who is a professor at UC Davis, wrote a book, her dissertation at Berkeley called Trust in the Land. And it was about Native Land Trust. And she invited me to a meeting of Native Land Trust about 6 months after. And I had no idea what I was going to go to do. But when I went to Southern California, I met these tribal people, both federally and non-federally recognized, that were buying back their own land, that were buying back sacred sites, that were long-term leasing these places so they could tell their stories again. And I thought that that was a good idea. That was a tool that we didn't have in our pocket for many years. And when I came back and I talked to my friend Janella LaRose, who is Shoshone, Bannock, and Ute, and had been doing these walks with me for all these decades, doing this work, and I talked to her about this. And we talked about the interesting thing that most of these land trusts, all of the land trusts that I went and saw, they were all run by Native guys. And I met this guy, Dune Lankard, many of you probably know, and I asked my new friend if this was a men's club. It was a boys' club. And Dune laughed, and he said, yeah, kinda. And he said, but not just Native land trusts. All land trusts are mostly run by men. And I began to think about that, and Janelle and I started having this conversation. What does that mean? And what does it mean that men are in charge of land? Where did that come from? How do we begin to unpack that idea? And this idea of what happens to women's bodies, what happened to us when colonizers got here, how the extraction and the rape and the taking away of the sacred happened during that time, and how it continues to happen to our Mother Earth, that there's this correlation and that we need to bring this balance back. And we began to use the word rematriation because it's about bringing that balance back into the earth. It does not mean that we throw away our sons and our uncles and our grandpas and any of that stuff, right? But it means that during colonization, our men also lost their sacred responsibilities as well. And it's time for that to come back into place as well. And as women, it's our responsibilities as Indigenous women to bring that balance back. We have the songs for our medicines and for our waterways. We have those songs for those new babies and those that are leaving this earth. And that is our time right now, as our medicine people are telling us, is to take up that space again to bring us back on that right track. Sigorate Land Trust blew up in this crazy way that I never even thought of. because of beautiful human beings that live in the Bay Area and farther out, that they saw this as as a way for us to kind of think about how do we work together. We're a non-federally recognized tribe. We have no treaties with the federal government. The federal government says that I don't exist. So what does that mean, right? What does that mean that I'm not an Indigenous woman, that I'm not sitting here in my own territory, that I have grandbabies here that I'm raising, that we're bringing back our language and our ways of life? In 2016, after Standing Rock, as we were still culminating, putting together Sogorea Land Trust, a group of people, young people, that was running a nursery, organic nursery in Deep East Oakland. And if you guys know what Deep East Oakland is, Deep East Oakland is that part where nobody remembers. And I actually live there, okay? So half a mile walk from my house, there's this organic nursery called Planting Justice. And they work with formerly incarcerated men and women and people that were recently migrated to the area. And they went to Standing Rock and they were moved by what happened at Standing Rock. And they said, we want to give you back this land, this 1/4 acre of land that we're not using on this 2-acre plot. And Janella and I had no idea who these young people were. And when we looked at this 1/4 acre of land, it had transmissions on it and pieces of concrete and all of this stuff, right? And we said, yes, we would take back this land on a couple of conditions. We would pay Janella salary for a year so she could make relationships with those people that were working that land, that we would clean up that land together, and that we would see how far it got and if those relationships were good. And so we did. Over the first year, we cleaned up that space. And my ancestors, I think that they always tell me these funny things in different ways. That piece of land is right along the LaShawn Creek, who we are named after, our waterway. It comes right across. It's a half-mile walk from my house. Underneath the freeway of the 880 freeway is under fill. And under that freeway, about a half a block away, one of our shell mounds were destroyed in order for them to put that freeway up. And so I know where that land sits is a place that my ancestors had had a village site for thousands of years, and that they were bringing it back to us in this totally different way. It still chokes me up, this first 1/4 acre of land that came back to us, and we decided, what are we going to do with this? And so all of our sacred sites are underneath asphalt and other places, and we decided that we needed a fire, a place to bring people back to that hearth. And we decided to create the first arbor in our territory in 250 years. And that arbor was supposed to get danced in, and right as we were getting ready for it, hundreds of white sage and tobacco plants had been readied for giveaway, and COVID happened. And we didn't dance it in that particular way. But we had young people that were being released from prison ask for permission to come and pray at that fire before they went home to their reservations. We've had celebrations of people passing over and fires there for them. We've had a wedding where I married my daughter in that arbor during COVID. It has become a hearth again for the LaShawn people. We have created relationships in different kinds of ways. So that's an MOU with a nonprofit organization, Landback in a different kind of way. It's not purchasing land. But we did have somebody that was gracious enough to give us money to purchase the Ashby Garden here in Berkeley recently. We have another MOU with an acre of land in El Sobrante along Garrity Creek that we're taking care of and growing foods that we distribute to our elders and to those that were immunosuppressed. We started doing that work during COVID. We have a small piece of land that has 13 fruit trees on in deep West Oakland that we are using to harvest as well, and working with young people to do that work. With another organization, American Indian Child Resource Center. And we recently were the first non-federally recognized tribe in California to receive almost 5 acres of land back from a city, the city of Oakland. So land back comes in a lot of different ways when you're doing this in your own territories and you're not federally recognized and you're using a nonprofit in order to do it. But I always say that if you open up your imagination, if people come with a good idea, that you say yes, and that we figure out how we do that kind of work together. And so I'm going to stop there and let PennElys go.
Shoot. That's so amazing. I've been following the work, and I'm excited to continue to follow and learn. So ani umanogi jagat everybody. My name is PennElys Droz. I'm going to just do a little. I think it's important to introduce the context through which to understand my words, right? So I'm an Anishinaabe, Wyandot, and random European descendant. I was raised to serve the continuation of Anishinaabe culture, though. So when you see my bio out there, a lot of the times it just says Anishinaabe because that's the culture that I've been brought up to serve. But I think it's important to acknowledge all of our ancestors and who we are in this world because it does impact how we move in this world. I was also raised in Shirai Yurok country, territory. So brought up in that community. I actually thought I was Yurok until I was about 10. And then I saw some paperwork and I'm like, I don't even know what Chippewa means. And had to, so, going back home when I was 18 to the Great Lakes transformed my life. I thought my family had lost our culture entirely and language and everything. And then realizing that we hadn't changed my life and created the direction that I have today. I was also, raised in community with the Wiyot tribe up there who have been, relentlessly praying and building relations and educating community and struggling and organizing to be able to get their sacred site back, their island, which is finally theirs again. So that was very influential. So my entryway to the work, and I've got to say also, I have the blessing of being able to say that I actually haven't been a director of anything for a very long time. That era of my life has passed. I'm currently, my role at Indian Collective has shifted. I'm the new power building and curriculum coordinator for Indian Collective. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that later. And then I was serving in a program officer role doing grant making for the past, time flies. I'm not quite sure how many years, but the origin story into the work was when I was a young teen. I was organized, I was raised to serve good in the world, good in the community. I tried to join the environmental movement at the time, and I'm getting older, so this was in the early 90s, and did not find a welcome home and did not find a space of cultural safety in what existed back then. And found my way to the Indigenous Environmental Network, which was very, very shaping. The other shaping things were when I was a young teen, at the same time parallel with the environmental, trying to be in Earth First and other direct action environmental movements when I was very young. I started learning about science, and I was taking a physics class and reading science books, and was really struck by how science seemed to be saying the same thing as our creation story, as our cosmology, as our way of even thinking about the world. And it felt so incredible Like, oh my gosh, like, look at what these scientists are saying. It's resonating so much, but it just feels like there must be some like unspoken agreement to, shh, don't talk about the meaning. Don't talk about the meaning, don't talk about the spirit, but what is being uncovered is the same kind of magic. So I got, very into science and was pursuing that path at the same time. And then the salmon kill, the fish kill happened up there. So all of those different things together led me to a place of recognizing that our creation stories, our cosmologies, our way of being in the world, our way of developing our intellects and our creativity in relationship to the land and each other has to be and can be the foundation of developing sustainable nations. That our communities, even though we have such deep, intense struggle, we have so much powerful potential to be the leaders and the models of what is possible in this world. And especially because of our connectivity. We're invested in each other. We're invested in our homelands. I grew up in a community where, there's a lot of struggle, a lot of addiction, a lot of violence, but, people are going to take care of each other's kids. Nobody's kids are going to go hungry. Like, what I mean, that kind of like community connectivity is what it will take to rebirth the new world, then the world that we want to give to our descendants. And so, long story short, we ended up starting an organization called Sustainable Nations. That organization served to to provide training, project development, program development, consulting, by and for Indigenous people in renewable energy, natural building, ecological wastewater treatment, and economic planning, and all from a basis of the spiritual responsibility we have to our homelands and each other. So did that work and learned a ton for a lot of years. Studied engineering and all of that stuff, and applied the practice of engineering from within our cultural lenses to do this design work and development work in communities. But I needed to shift. I was a director for a long time of that work, and it was beautiful. But I'm a mother of many, and you sometimes life you serve a piece of your work, and then it's time to shift. And so I had the blessing of being invited to join the Indian Collective when we were just new. I was the fifth hire. And now we have over 70 folks on our team. It's been pretty amazing. And now we're in the Landback movement. Now we're in that time, which we've been, but now we're articulating and we're networking around this framework, which holds so much power. It holds so much power. Nothing is bolder than unapologetically saying Landback. Nothing is bolder. And to create the big kinds of transformational change that this earth is demanding and that our communities need to be able to provide a future for our descendants, we need to be able to speak bold things into the space. We have not lost our spiritual responsibility to this land. We haven't lost that, And so from that foundation, what do we do to turn things around? We extend our care, we extend our governance, we come back into relation with that land. So now through Indian, how do we support this movement? in the past, a lot of years, it's been our home base is in the Black Hills. Our home base is in Lakota country. So there is a strong push there to serve that work in the heart of where our organization was founded. As you probably know, the Black Hills, the Lakota nations have never accepted the money that they were offered for the Black Hills. The federal government acknowledged that the Black Hills were stolen from the Lakota illegally, even to the terms of colonial law. Okay, and have been offering the Lakotas, I forget the number, but a significant dollar to accept in exchange of the Black Hills, and they have never accepted. And so there is a movement there that's being built, and I can't speak to all of the different details of the local work for various reasons. So that's one of our hearts. Another way that we're supporting this is we have grants and we have funds. So we have a grant foundation. If you're doing this work right now, we actually have an open opportunity. We have the Community Self-Determination Grant is open right now, and it is only open for a month. I'm sorry to say. So I'm glad I get to speak this opportunity into a full room. Tell your people. We grant make from Canada to the, colonial Canada to the US down through Mexico. And it is $100,000 a year for 2 years. It's a 2-year grant opportunity. We also have a community action fund that is a smaller dollar value, but it supports climate change protection response and also land defense, land water defense. We also have a regenerative business investment fund that we operate as well, and a political arm that does, that works in Washington, and an action and organizing team. So Indians serves this movement in a lot of different ways. My new role is exciting because I'm getting to basically gather up all of those years of doing regenerative development work, supporting people to learn about what land trusts are. And so it's just so wonderful. Like, this is a great movement, really helpful tool. Like, all of these things are tools, right? And just to be able to support people with resources, to build networks across our nations, to share knowledge, to share resources, to sort of get skilled up, to step into this Landback movement fully. So my new role is building these learning networks and supporting these knowledge resources. So that's super exciting. And and Landback is Landback is getting land back. Landback is also extending our care and governance to lands that for some reason can't be given back right now. And I want to bring our founder, Nick Tilson's words into the room, because he just said it to some folks today. He's like, co-management is not land back. And I'm going to say that a little louder for the people in the back. Co-management is not land back. It may be a step towards a conversation, but it's not land back. And so extending our care and governance to lands that can't be given back right now, it's bigger than co-management. And then also, a lot of folks might not know this, but we also have land back issues within our own reservations. 1860 Allotment Act, I'm going to wrap this up real quick. I know I'm running too tight on time, but 1860 Allotment Act, land was checkerboarded up. Formerly communally held land, Indigenous land, checkerboarded up, allotted to each individual male head of household. I mean, imagine all of that. Like, I won't even go into that. And then the surplus land was given away to settlers. Okay, so we have these checkerboarded reservations. I'm not going to talk about the settler land within Indigenous land. I'm just going to leave that there right now. But one of our issues also is that now the descendants of that one man, we have 300, 400 descendants of that one man, effectively making it virtually impossible to actually care for our land together or use that land. There are models though. There's Indian Land Tenure Foundation is helping people out. There's also the San Javier Community Farm that was organized down in Tonatam territory, down in Arizona, where the Alatis all got together and did a lot of that hard healing and organizing work and constantly do, to start a cooperative farm. So there's so much possibility and so much power in this movement. It's really revolutionary for every single one of settler or Indigenous or wherever you come from. So
Thank you.
Sego Sewagwego, Kawenniiosta Jock, Wagatahuni, Horinoshoni, Wagahonjodo, Dano, Akwesasne de Wageno. My name is Kawenniiosta. I'm Wolf Clan from Akwesasne. I don't really like to say I'm Mohawk. I say that I'm a Kawenniiosta. I also don't like to identify with First Nations, Aboriginal, or none of that. I say I'm Ungwehonwe, which is the original beings of these lands. So, yeah, my part of my project is we were able to raise funds last fall, about 874,000 to buy back ancestral lands in the Adirondacks. That's where my people came from, and probably when all those checkerboards started, our people were forced out of their lands and put onto reservations 4 hours away, and our Mohawk community got split up into 7 communities throughout so-called Canada. And Akwesasne is in both this side, Ontario and Quebec. And what our reservations have become today is cement sidewalks and houses, really close together, small spaces to grow food. But not only that, Akwesasne is home to one of the largest PCB dumps in North America. And so our lands are contaminated with PCBs, our waterways, the Alcoa General Motors just dumped all of their sludge and whatnot into our waterways, and that was how we really took care of ourselves, eating fish, living off the land. And so today our people are really sick because of that. Cancer, young women having babies with birth defects, all of those things. And so I was really fortunate to have met some really beautiful people who had started an organization with my father called the Waterfall Unity Alliance. And I have paperwork on the table out there with a lot more information about the organization, but through the organization we were able to buy back a piece of our ancestral land that was actually a Turtle Clan village, and our people haven't been there in 420 years. And so it's about 4.5 hours away from Akwesasne, where I grew up, where I was raised, and I am making my way back there with my children. I was really fortunate for my parents raising me in my traditional ways. I don't know if anybody's heard of the Akwesasne Freedom School. I am an alumni of the Akwesasne Freedom School. I have 4 children there now, and that's been the only thing that's been keeping me there, because I don't want to take them from ceremony, from language. So I have to bring that all to the valley with me. I refuse to put them into the public school system there, and so we are creating our language school, Ahonjage language immersion, which is on the earth, and a healing center. It's also the area that we bought the farm, just down the way. We started a longhouse, and my father started that project, and like the old school longhouses, and then there's a waterfall there. There's, that's where our people used to go, and that was their ceremonial sites and things like that. Like everything about that land is just really, it's just really beautiful. And I spent a lot of time in the mountains with my children, and I remember just only, I think last year, driving through, and I'm like, man, all these white people, like, must be real nice to wake up every morning on my grandkids' land, And now here we are, like, back in the mountains, back on our homelands, and it's just really been a journey back to self. Landback isn't just about getting our land back, but it's also about getting self back. Because in order to get land back, we have to get self back. And so I've been on this journey of, reconnecting with myself, with my ancestors, and my grandmothers came from this land. And so I've been really guided by them. And, like my skirt is creation started, like this is Sky Woman. She through the portal and she grabbed onto those roots. And the farm that we got is a 60-acre work and berry farm. It's been in operation for the last 50 years. And the only issue about this farm is that it's not organic. It's been extorted. The land is barely hanging on, but as you know, us women, the female energy is very resilient, still hanging on. And I've been rematriating that land. Me and my daughters singing to the land and doing ceremony, making our offerings, burning tobacco. And everything that I've learned through this journey of reconnecting with self, I know that I'm supposed to bring my people back home and show them that the process that I went through and the connections that I made is what I'm supposed to bring back to our people. You talk about the men. It's so important that we stand our men back up, but also we have to be healthy women as well, and it's really hard. It's really hard for us to do this work and then be so much stuck in the same environment, right? And so I'm really on a mission to bring my people back home, and create safe space for them with this Longhouse project, bringing our men back there and instilling that pride and having them work on the Longhouse and having them reconnect with their mother. It's really important. And I feel like I'm forgetting like so much, but if I am, there's a thing out there that you can read, and make sure to grab one when you walk out. And Nyawankoa. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You all touched on so many of the things that I wanted the audience to be able to walk away with. I think one of the things that I wanted to discuss is kind of twofold. One, why is it important for Indigenous people to get land back, right? In the sense of why are people saying that this is one of the most important things to help heal our communities and the destruction that's been done through the ongoing colonialism, But ongoing genocide, I think a lot of people, think of that term as something historic, right? But that's presently, it's ongoing, it continues to happen. And in that spirit of inspiration, like your experiences to inspire our Native youth that this is a possibility, and what are some of the experiences, the beautiful experiences that you've had reinvigorating connections with ancestral lands? What happens when you get land back, and why is it important? You go first.
Okay. So the reason why, to me, why it's so important is because the land holds a lot of our memory, and when we reconnect to the land and when we give our tobacco and it's always about, it's never asking for things, right? We don't ask for things. We're just grateful for what creation gives us, and we remain in that state of gratitude. And what was your
What are some of the experiences? What are some of the experiences that you've had? These experiences are wrapped in magic, right? The magic that happens when those reconnections start happening.
I guess it's the energy and the things that start coming to you, and the knowledge and the teachings, and our society has taught us to be really instilled so much fear, right? Like even around our menstrual cycles and blood, right? Like we were taught that's dirty and you don't talk about that stuff, and that's that's our life force, right? And to bring those teachings back to our young women and to the young people of bringing that and offering that to the water, to the female energy and to your mother, that activates something in return, because we're always living, our worlds are always going like this with creation, right? And so it's been it's just really beautiful, and it just it ripples out, the more we go within ourselves, and even following intuition and all of that, learning to trust, it brings so much, and I'm sure it's going to be different for everybody. But the greatest thing is coming back to self and remembering where we come from. The stars and the constellations and things like that.
Corrina.
Well, I think that I'll just say this, and I've got some young folks up there from Segurite Land Trust. Yeah, we have a youth program. I think that it's important for young people to say yes. And I think that that's something I didn't learn when I was a young person. And as a woman, I didn't learn how to say yes. And that I was fearful of saying yes. And that yes has gotten me to places that I would not have been able to walk into doors because I said yes. And it's because there are people that when we say yes to those ancestors and what they've asked us to do in this world, that people come to us and they cross our life paths and they bring us these miracles that you would not have thought of. These young people that came to us from Planting Justice that we didn't know offered us a 1/4 acre of land. Who would have thought that in 250 years, that's the first piece of land that we have gotten back? Imagine that we find ourselves homeless in our own homeland. I grew up in my own traditional territory. Nobody owned a home. Ohlone people don't own homes. So we find ourselves being the first ones gentrified out of our home territories and continue to be gentrified. We see ourselves taught in the past. So this is an ongoing genocide, that when you erase people continuously, that we're always in the past, that's a continuous genocide of a people. If you don't see us, then we don't matter, and you could talk about us in the past, and that's horrible that happened, When you do land acknowledgments, and we acknowledge that Ohlone people used to live here, and they used to do this, and That means nothing unless there's reciprocity in that work. And so I say that for young people to say yes, because I didn't find myself doing this work alone. It's not me. It's the hundreds of people that are doing this with me. It's the hundreds of people that pay shumi. It's the hundreds of people that believe that these sacred sites are worth fighting for. It's the hundreds of people that invite us to come and speak so that we could share our stories. But I will say this about getting land back. I was raised in my traditional territory. I raised my children in our traditional territory. But it wasn't until we got that piece of land back that I can see something different in my grandchildren's eyes. They have a rootedness that is something that's beyond magic, that they understand that this is their place, that they ask for their birthday parties to be at the arbor, that they understand what flowers are growing there, that they're picking up the language and creating their own songs, that these are the things that come back, the magic, the miracles that we talk about. So we just put ourselves out there as vessels for these ancestors. We believe that there is this faith that they will catch us, and they have. And so when I talk about that's, I think the most amazing thing is to watch my grandchildren thrive in their homelands and to know that they belong in a whole different way than the last 5 or 6 generations.
I'm from Southern California, from Mojave Desert, and you talked about Beth Rose Middleton and the power of her work, starting with the work of the Native American Land Conservancy down there in the desert. And, we had gone to sites, in particular families that were culture keepers. We would go and we would visit these areas, and there's such a deep sadness, right? When you go and you see graffiti and, broken beer bottles and that sort of thing. And so, sometimes, people would talk about these in my lifetime, in my early lifetime, these places are gone, right? That's part of the genocide. These places are erased. The language is gone. But they're not, it's just dormant, right? And so when we receive these land back, and whatever mechanism people are moving through to be able to get these, pockets of ancestral territories back and speaking the language, right? Those places need to hear the language. They need to hear the song. They come alive. They not only come alive in the landscape, but they come alive for our children. And it's one of those things that it doesn't just benefit the Native peoples. Everybody that's reckoning with their settler colonialism and feels, the devastation themselves of what it is to take, Indigenous peoples' caretaking ways from the land, to strip it and see that we're in climate crisis and we're, environment. A lot of people want to see these spaces re-indigenized, right? And so I not only honor the people that are fighting for this land back, right? Because it's really important that these sites hear and feel their native blood memory coming back to them, because magic starts to happen, right? Mm-hmm. And it's also really important for our settler colonial people that are reckoning with, these privileges that they've inherited, and how do I help people? It's very simple. These mechanisms are ways of giving back, right? And they don't come without challenges. We've had a conversation, you've alluded to it. We're having to move through still colonial constructs, right? Of, even I'm from a federally recognized tribe. Some of my sisters here on this panel are from non-federally recognized tribes. But even with federally recognized tribes, we do not own the land, right? These lands are held in trust, right? Well, reservation lands do not belong to the tribes, right? They're held in trust by the federal government. And so even within federally recognized tribes, this idea of land trusts and nonprofits come up, right? And I think I've had this epiphany. I had this epiphany about 20 years ago where I was like, meeting all of these people, all of these Indigenous people that I admired and that were doing this work that was, you know, in my heart as a Native person to perpetuate culture, to bring, you know, orchards back, to bring language back, to bring all of the good things back. And everybody was not tribal officials. You know, they were not our government leaders. They were all directors of nonprofits. You know, they were grant makers. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about just the very mechanisms of how you received your land back. Was it through a nonprofit? And what were some of the key milestones, whether it be a gift from a non-Native ally or the organization of a nonprofit? Can each of you talk a little bit about a success story of, or a challenging story of how you received your land back?
Well, for us, you know, we had a lot of support from non-Oglahoma people. A lot of I cannot say the word for like I try to say this all the time and I cannot say it.
Philanthropy.
Yes. I don't know why I can't say that word, but I'm always like blah 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 blah. Yeah, so we had a lot of support from them and from different organizations. We had bridge loans, we had donations, we did fundraisers, unity concerts, and everything went through the organization. And in the future, once everything starts going, we would like to put it back into just all Ongwehue, back to the people and out of the organization, so that it's back to just organic, you know, just our homelands again. Yeah, and even, you know, going up to New York State and being like, we ain't paying these land taxes. Like, we never ceded or surrendered. You just took it. You murdered our women, our children, and our people, and you forced us out of here, you know. And so been really grateful for everybody that supported us so far. Yamgoa.
Thank you.
My turn. Yeah, let's see. Well, I talked a lot about that first piece of land that we received back, and you know, that's a miracle. But this whole thing of nonprofit weirdness, it's weird. Okay. When we were doing our original work as Indian people organizing for change in the tribe about sacred sites protection work, it was not under a nonprofit. It was out of people's pockets and out of their good hearts and people wanting to feed us and all of that kind of stuff. It was not about this. But when we started talking about a land trust, we had to figure out how do we fit into this weird thing that doesn't really fit us as Indigenous people, right? Because there's a bunch of laws that are created to keep you running. And if you run a nonprofit, you know you're on this treadmill and you're running and running and running, right? And so I was like, I think I was sitting during COVID at my kitchen table, unable to go to the bathroom for a number of hours because I had back-to-back meetings like some of you probably did, right? And I was sitting there at my regular meeting with my bookkeeper every week, and I was looking out at my backyard. And I was like, geez, I did not start a land trust so I could never get to the land. Right? And not even to my backyard, right? And so that is the truth of it, is that we are building something that we are praying that is sustaining beyond us, that it goes beyond us eventually, right? But that these laws change, right? Because when you start talking about Indigenous land trusts, there's these laws that are in nonprofits that doesn't make any sense when you're talking about tribal people. It doesn't make sense that you can't have somebody working with you Like, my children work for the land trust. That makes sense to me, right? But there's this whole idea of nepotism, right? That's out there. That doesn't make sense for Indigenous people. Who am I building this for if it's not to bring the next generation with us, right? So it's this weird stuff that we have to dance around and figure out, how do we do this work, right? How do we use this model in order to fit our needs? And I think that I just needed to say that out loud so that people understood that, right? And I think that, the great thing is that, I want to say that there's miracles every day when there's land involved. On last Tuesday, we had a land day. We implemented a day a month that everybody, no matter what your job is, you're coming to the land and you're going to work that day. And so we went to one of the pieces of land and we cleared 4 rows that we're going to grow food in, and we mulched it all back and we turned the dirt over, and it took us about an hour and a half, and then we were sitting there joking and eating food and sharing with each other and becoming community, and that land begins to hear that laughter again, and that it begins to tell those jokes again, and that's where human beings are supposed to be. And just to say what you were saying is that, science caught up with us, right? And as human beings, we know that the land feeds us in so many different ways. It feeds us emotionally, spiritually, physically, mentally, right? And of course, Western science now says the same things that we've known as human beings forever, right? As human beings, we knew that. And during COVID, we got hundreds of people's emails and phone calls wanting to come to the land because intrinsically we knew as human beings we were supposed to do that, and that was going to cause healing for us, right? And so I just say that, every time we're at the land, whenever we're able to bring people to the land, whenever we're able to light a fire at the arbor, whenever we're able to identify one of our traditional plants and actually baby it to go back to where it's supposed to originally be, then that magic is happening. And so I think that any day on the land is a good day.
Thank you. Can I reflect something? Yeah. I want to reflect what my sisters are saying. Like, notice like these tools, these nonprofits, these land trusts, these, whatever we're operating with right now. These are temporary tools, right? These are temporary tools. What did colonialism do? Same thing colonialism did to back in Europe, to indigenous European people, is, severing relationships of people to land so that you can amass wealth and power, right? And so removing people from relationship with the land, economically, removing people's economic relationships, spiritual relationship, emotional, mental, just people have just been removed from land. You just remove people from their relationships. And so, Landback is restoring the healing, restoring those relationships between people and their land. Think about how powerful that is to flip the tides of colonialism. Like, everywhere people reconnect with land, you are doing something incredibly powerful, especially if you are an Indigenous person connecting with your homeland. There's relationships there that are magic. And these tools that we're using to facilitate them, they're just temporary. But the healing that needs to happen, though, like our peoples, from what I've been taught, and I actually see it today. What am I even talking about? It's not even in the past, but we have agreements and ways of governing ourselves in relation to land. We have agreements and teachings and ways that we're supposed to take care of ourselves in relation to our homelands. And those are intact in a lot of our nations. When we will be at a place where we can get rid of these tools, it'll be when we have done that work that is happening to reinstitute our governance, to reinstitute our agreements, to heal the hearts of our people, so that we can live in our governance practices and our land-based governance practices again, in community accountability and health. And then we can get rid of these tools, right?
Yes.
I got something to say. I want to kind of just tell a really short story. So I recently have became the director of or the president of the board for the Waterfall Unity Alliance, and it is totally outside my realm. It's so foreign to me, and like I had to have my first board meeting, and I'm like, this feels really wrong. I feel like I totally just betrayed my people. I feel so colonized. I don't like this. Why do I gotta talk like this? I feel so white, like, and so I'm just really lucky that, you know, I was greeted back with, we don't have to do it like this. We can do it totally however you want to do it. And I'm like, oh, okay, because this is really bothering me. Like, it really, like, I don't know, it makes you feel some type of way, but learning to trust, right? And trying to use it and think of it as a tool for now, and just trying to like slide out as soon as possible, you know?
Well, we're getting pretty close to time, and it's just coming up for me. It was something that I learned in the Indigenous Forum many years ago, that Vine Deloria once said the health of Indigenous people are like the miner's canaries. And when land is taken away from the first caretakers, the whole world is in trouble, right? And so we've been on this path of destruction, and this Landback movement is happening, right? If you were to go in and search the interwebs for Landback movement, you're gonna see it's happening in Oregon, it's happening in California, it's happening everywhere, right? And it comes with its challenges, right? Because we're having to find tools, mechanisms to be able to do it. Not all of us are from federally recognized tribes, so we're doing it through nonprofits. Sometimes it's creating factionalism. Sometimes people are confused for who to give the land back to, right? And whose territory and who's legitimate and who's not. That's the small pictures, right? The big pictures is the healing that can take place across all cultures, right? Interculturally, this is the right thing to do, right? We are the original caretakers of the lands. We have not just knowledge that was passed down, but inherent blood memory, right? That's tied to the landscapes that we're from. And when we were having our amazing Zoom conversation, getting ready for this panel, you were saying about you can re-indigenize any place, you know? So if you're a Native person and you're not in your homelands, right? You can re-indigenize space. Non-Native people too, you know, they can really attempt to decolonize their minds and decolonize their ways of being, to give space, to give leadership, to give power, and to give land back. Somebody else said it, give it all back, right? Right, it's not just about land back. So we're gonna close out this panel with each of my sisters talking about a call to action for, you know, how can Native people and non-Native people support your individual work. And I hope everybody has taken away as much as I have from this panel today. But can you tell us how we can support your work?
Yeah, but really, really quick.
Yeah.
Wherever you see a tree growing, wherever you see some grass growing, wherever you see a flower growing, anything, that's where you, if that's all you have, then that's all you have, and that's okay, because it doesn't matter where you are on this planet. You know, anywhere's where there's something growing, creation is there. That's all you need. And if you don't have that, start some seeds, because as you're growing these seeds, you're also growing relationship with self, you know, and that's how we kind of reconnect. And so we don't always need the big land or anything, you know. It can start in our homes. But as far as how you can support our project, you can go to waterfallunityalliance.org. We have a GoFundMe page, GoFundMe.com/Mohawk Return, and you can read all about the story of how we began and how you can help us. We have a crap load of berries that need to be picked and eaten, and you can come to the farm and help and visit and take a dip in the waterfall, whatever you want to do. So, you know, and I also just want to say that because it wasn't organic, we are working to turn the soil back into organic and have, you know, all organic berries. And one of the biggest things that I did not mention is that because of the amount of pollution in our lands back home on the reservations, I'm working with another group that I'm a part of, Ungwe Inc., and which is a community garden initiative back in Akwesasne, and we are allocating land after we get it back to organic to grow food on a large scale to be able to send it back home to our communities and have, you know, clean food grown and with love and in ceremony and in hopes to uplift the spirits and minds of our people. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was also gonna, you know, begin with the beginning, you know, and encourage, you know, all of us to reconnect yourself, you know, reconnect yourself to the diversity of your ancestors, you know, reconnect yourself to the land, because that is a revolutionary act and offers, you know, wisdom and power that will help guide everybody towards knowing how to build a world together. Also, if you are non-Indigenous, find out whose land you're on and figure out how to serve that to whatever your capacity is. You know, as far as Indian Collective, let folks know that we have resources. Let folks know, let your local Landback efforts know that Indian Collective would, you know, we have some resources to support. We're building, if you want to enter a learning network of other people that are working on getting land back, if you're a Native person that's working on that, holla holla. That's my new job. I'm pretty excited about that. To be able to build networks of people together to move this along. And also, if you want to support Indian Collective's work, buying back chunks of territory in the Black Hills and supporting the land back work in the heart of Indian Collective territory. IndianCollective.org, reach out, check us out. We're moving and shaking out there.
All right. Shumi. All right. Shumi is an honorary tax that was started. We based that off of when Tia Peters started a land tax up when the Wiots were getting their island back. And we asked people that are non-native that live, play, or work in our territory, which is Alameda, Contra Costa, San Joaquin, Solano, and parts of Napa, to pay into our Shumi. And you can go to SigorteLandTrust.org and you could figure out, there's a whole platform. You could plug in their numbers. It'll give you a suggested donation. And we actually live off of the donations that you all give us. If you live outside of the Bay Area, there's a Rematriate the Land Fund that actually helps us to purchase land, to pay taxes on that land, to pay all the fees that go with the land, that when you get land, so that when you get land, it doesn't come for free, that there's all of this other stuff that has to go with it, right? And so we offer that. We are also still in a fight to protect the oldest shell mound along the Bay Area. Please look at shellmound.org and donate there. We are still paying legal fees. It is a beautiful website that talks about the history of the shell mound and stuff. If you are in the territory in Berkeley for the next few days, go down to the West Berkeley Shell Mound. Please put a tie on the fence, a prayer, a message. Just know that those ancestors are still there underneath that 2 acres of land that we're trying to see and envision opening up Strawberry Creek here in our territory. I also work with amazing people, and so I have my sister here that's trying to save her home site in Marin, Alliance for Save Felix Cove. Please check out her organization, and help us to try to figure out how to do that work as well. We have youth, invite our young people to come to places, give land back. So how about that? Land back means actually land back. Figure out a way to give us back the land if you are not using it. Figure out ways to come to the land and to be helpful. And the one thing that we're doing is a campaign for Earth Day right now. We're asking, many people say, can we come to the land and do work on the land? We can't host everybody, but all of this is our land. And so if you see garbage in your city streets, please go pick it up. Take a picture, send it to us on Instagram. Invite your churches, your synagogues, your mosques. Go out there and do something, because all of this land is indigenous land, and we need to live in reciprocity with one another. Thank you.